Welcome to Nugget 338 with Stephen Dana Groman, and we are continuing on in our Spacey series from our visit to the Museum of Space History in Alamogordo, New Mexico. In our last nugget, we talked about Robert Goddard, the father of American rocketry, and today we're moving on to a new figure in history, and he is part of the shame of rocketry in some regards. His name is Dr. von Braun. Here is the picture of him surrendering to the U.S. Army counterintelligence personnel in Europe in April 1945. Dr. von Braun was among a famous group of rocket experimenters in Germany in the 1930s. He is shown second from right in this photo. This early work eventually led to the development of space programs around the world, but it also led to the development of the dangerous weapons of the Cold War years and their more powerful offspring, which are in military arsenals today. And one of the reasons that he and this rocket are in the shame of rocketry is because of the damage that it did to London during World War II. This photo is probably from World War II. A V-2 rocket emerges from its camouflage shelter. The team of German engineers and scientists who developed the V-2 came to the United States after World War II and worked for the U.S. Army at Fort Bliss Propulsion, Texas, and Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama.
Even in Scientific American, in September of 2020, they actually did an article and they included Wernher von Braun in the article. Read some of that.
What made the prospect real in the 20th century was the advent of rocketry. Robert Goddard is often called the father of modern rocketry, but it was Germans, led by Nazi scientist Wernher von Braun, who built the world's first usable rocket, the V-2 missile. A parallel U.S. Army-funded rocket program at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory demonstrated its own large ballistic missile shortly after the war. The U.S. government's Operation Paperclip discreetly brought von Braun and his team to the States to accelerate the work, which, among other things, eventually led to NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. And we've been to NASA's Marshall Flight Center. And another interesting thing about von Braun is some of the other people he hung around, and who was that?
Yeah, his connection with Walt Disney was rather interesting.
And it's kind of Disney's connection with him that's rather interesting. You'll have to go down that rabbit hole on your own, but there's plenty of information out there about that these two did hang around each other.
They worked together on a few things.
Yeah, that's probably the better way to say that. His full name is Werner Magnus Maximilian Führer von Braun. That sounds
Learned to
impressive.
spell that as a young child.
He was born March 23, 1912, and was a German and later American aerospace engineer and space architect. He was the leading figure in the development of rocket technology in Nazi Germany and a pioneer of rocket and space technology in the United States. While in his 20s and early 30s, von Braun worked in Nazi Germany's rocket development program. He helped design and develop the V-2 rocket. As we previously mentioned, in the Scientific American article, we also have this from the National Archives. Operation Paperclip was a secret United States intelligence program in which more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians were taken from former Nazi Germany to the U.S. for government employment after the end of World War II in Europe between 1945 and 1959. Conducted by the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, it was largely carried out by special agents of the U.S. Army's Counterintelligence Corps. Many of these personnel were former members and some were former leaders of the Nazi Party. Not common knowledge, it's becoming more common knowledge.
It's becoming more and more. Well, I've known about this for actually decades. I couldn't say anything.
No.
In mainstream publications now.
In 1960, his group was assimilated into NASA, where he served as director of the newly formed Marshall Space Flight Center and was the chief architect of the Saturn V Super Heavy Lift Launch Vehicle. This is one of the refreshing parts of the story of Wernher von Braun.
Right. Yeah, he was actually interviewed by C.M. Ward, who was a radio personality evangelist back in the 60s. And he interviewed von Braun in 1966. He told a story about how he was at a little church, a little Pentecostal church in El Paso, Texas in the 60s. And there he had an experience with the Lord.
Well, here's a little bit from the article about that interview. Wernher von Braun, one of Nazi Germany's leading rocket scientists, became a pioneer in America's space program following World War II. But it was von Braun's conversion to Christ that captured the attention of Assemblies of God radio preacher C.M. Ward. Ward interviewed the scientist in 1966, during which von Braun described the relationship between his newfound faith and his life work in science. Jumping down, von Braun and his German scientists were relocated to the United States, where they became indispensable to the development of American military and space programs. Von Braun's life had changed drastically within the course of a year, but it was at a little church in El Paso, Texas, as you mentioned, that von Braun experienced a spiritual transformation that would change him from the inside out. In Germany, von Braun had been nominally Lutheran, but functionally atheist. He had no interest in religion or God, and unfortunately that is the case with many in this field of cosmology and astronomy. In Texas, while living at Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso, a neighbor invited him to church, which is a great thing.
That's good.
You should invite your neighbor to church.
That's right. No matter who they are.
Yeah, even if it is the head of NASA.
Even if they're former Nazis.
Or the head of NASA.
Go figure.
Right. He went expecting to find the religious equivalent of a country club. Instead, he found a small white frame building with a vibrant congregation of people who loved the Lord. He realized that he had been morally adrift and that he needed to surrender himself to God. He converted to Christ and, over the coming years, became quite outspoken in his evangelical faith and frequently addressed the complementarity, that's a tough word to say, of faith and science.
Now, the thing apparently that Wernher von Braun, he got to feeling really guilty because the technology he was developing with good intentions, trying to get a man to space, became a tool of war and creating rockets that could be airborne for a long period of time and kill people.
And that's the part of the shame wall that they have there at that museum.
Right, and it really got to him.
The rockets manufactured by slave labor indiscriminately killed thousands of people. We like to use the website Find a Grave, and we found Wernher von Braun's memorial. He is buried in Ivy Hill Cemetery in Alexandria, Virginia. And you want to tell everyone what he has on his very plain and basic and simple
very simple
stone.
Headstone. On it, he has Psalm 19:1.
He chose to put something godly on his tombstone.
He realized there must be a creator and could not have been an accident. And he even then spoke against evolution.
To the chief musician, a psalm of David. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork.
That's for sure.
If you appreciate our content, tell others and repost on your social platforms. Thank you.